I'm Keith Wooden, and I'm here with Rob Spaulding, and Rob is the director of the Christian Center, and we're kind of hitting on a hot topic today, one of many, but it's all about this larger umbrella of homelessness.
Correct.
And so can I just go ahead and ask you the elephant in the room question then? Because the hot topic we want to talk about then is panhandling.
Right.
And it really is it's an issue.
Yeah, that's the one we're getting the most talk about. And let me just give you a little background on me first, what I've done prior to here. I run this rescue ministry now here in Midwest, in Anderson, Indiana. But prior to that, I spent about 15, 16 summers in New York City working with the homeless.
I did not know that until just now.
Yeah, and we'd go out all the time, not only in the summer, but spent quite a bit of time out there, and also in Philadelphia and Chicago, but primarily New York City. So I had a lot of experience with panhandlers.
Wow. So help me understand, because one of the big issues that everybody's asking about is, how do I tell a real panhandler from somebody who's just hustling me?
Right.
Okay. And I know that's a peripheral issue before we dive into the deeper issue.
Right.
But let's start with that one, okay?
Well, you mean telling the difference between somebody that's actually in need and somebody who isn't actually in need or whatever?
Thanks for putting it so nicely. That was great.
Yeah. We look at, there's a lot of reasons why people are panhandling. We see them, and a lot of them, there are a significant number of people who don't really need that as a source of income, but choose that as a way of maybe generating extra income, or really just to kind of take advantage of maybe the goodwill of people. But in general, when you look at the statistics, about 81% of people who panhandle are people who are in genuine need of that money.
Wow,
resources.
I am so thankful to hear that, because that clears up a lot for me right away.
Sure.
So there is some genuine need out there.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that you'll see is that, I mean, there are many reasons why people who are in need panhandle. They can't find work. They don't have transportation.
Okay.
They have either an illness, maybe a mental illness, or something that restricts their ability to work, and they turn to panhandling as a way of doing that. So,
but what makes it, I mean, we've talked about that part, but what makes it controversial in this area, in our backyard?
Right. Because if you have 81% of people who are actually in need, you have the 19% who are really kind of working the system. And I think that's, for me, I think there's a couple of ways of telling some differences there. And for me, one of the defining things, the people who are standing at the exit ramp or whatever, in general, rule of thumb, many of them or most of them are that's their job. They choose to do that as opposed to working something else. And that's a population I generally don't give money to. And,
sure.
My rule of thumb also, and I get that question a lot, people will say, just give me an answer. Do you give money to panhandlers or not? And of course, all those answers are nuanced. And for me, it's, do I have the money in my pocket? Can I spare the money? And I just kind of listen to, is the Spirit calling me to give them, to help them? So usually, I guess, for me, somebody sitting at an office ramp or standing at an exit ramp may not be a person in need, a genuine need, but the guy who shuffles up to you at McDonald's wanting $1 for a hamburger probably needs the $1.
Wow, that is so helpful. But now there's part of this that goes to the direction of your ministry, and that is with the Christian Center. Mm-hmm. You're getting some pushback on this issue as well, as if the presence of the Christian Center is a part of the problem.
Yeah, that's
but it's
correct.
not a part of the problem.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, we run the only rescue missions in our county. So we're the only emergency shelter. We're the only emergency men's shelter, only emergency women's shelter. We're the only soup kitchen. We're the only other resources. We do about 12 different services that we provide. And as a result, people assume that anyone who is standing on a street corner or appears homeless is somehow connected to us. And often the case is they come here and eat, and they get the resources they need to survive. But that generally isn't a thing where what they do after that shouldn't be our responsibility. We're just trying to supply, provide for them. So yeah, that's been, in general terms, I think that's what you see. Homeless people are usually connected to some. There's got to be a reason why they're there. And for me, you do a little research and you look at a community of our size, 60,000 or so, and what you discover is that when you look at comparable cities who do not have a vibrant organization that feeds people, provides opportunities for them to get something to eat, to, in our case, we have a place where they can shower, wash their clothes, things like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we call it the Elio Center. And for us, we know that provides those needs. In communities that don't have services like this, you see other types of problems. You see car break-ins skyrocket, panhandling skyrockets. You see petty thefts. You see shoplifting. You see all these other types of crime tend to be much higher in communities where there's not a service for people to eat.
So, in essence, quite the opposite of the accusation, if you will, or the observation is, rather than being a part of the problem, this really becomes part of the solution here in town. And it's not attracting something, it's really reaching into their lives and helping them out.
That's correct. That's absolutely right. And that's getting people to understand that, because what they see is they see somebody standing on the corner or standing on the corner near my place of business or whatever, and that becomes problematic. And I understand that you don't want people sleeping in the doorway of your office, and you don't want that. And those are things that we look upon, us and our partners in law enforcement and other things, to sort of be able to mitigate that disruption for people, and in a way that we can still provide those services.
You know, and maybe you have an opinion, because that's what I'm looking for really is, but there's been a lot of legislation that's tried to shape this.
Right.
And you're smiling already because legislation hasn't worked very well on shaping this issue, has it?
No, it really hasn't. And the problem is there's a need there that people need. People need to be fed, things like that. And what happens is as long as things like panhandling is a legal activity, people are going to participate in it. So
now, can I ask you though, how do you keep your heart full of compassion? You know what I mean? Because you could turn the other direction and get hard.
Yeah.
And how do you keep your heart full of compassion in those situations then?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I'm always reminded that the people that we meet are people who are created in the image of the same God that we were created in. And that's one of the things that we really feel is important. And it's just some kind of human compassion and human kindness that's really, really important. And, there are people who cheat that system. And the idea is to not let them kind of poison you towards everyone.
And to keep that percentage in our brains, this 19 versus 81%.
Yeah.
And, we are a very judgmental society right now.
Very cynical.
Cynical. And you use this simple phrase, be kind, and you just kind of passed it by. But you know what? When we look at another person in the image of God or with the heart that is tender, it compels us out of love to reach across those boundaries.
Yeah, and really, what's the worst thing that could happen? And
oh man,
I mean, if you give somebody a $5 bill who didn't need it, and then you give somebody a $5 bill who is in desperate need. I was sitting on a subway once, and this is not exactly the same, but this is to show you how. I had become. It was the same trip that I was out there in New York, and I was really just kind of had a little bit of a chip, I guess, on my shoulder about the cheaters versus the people who are in genuine need. And I was riding in a train coming in from Brooklyn, and a young lady gets on this train, and the train goes in motion, and she stands up and she says, "Look, I don't know none of yous," in her great Brooklyn accent. "Look, I don't know none of yous." But she said, "I am pregnant and I am hungry," and she was. Her clothes were a bit dirty. She was clearly very legitimately pregnant. She was clearly pregnant. And she said, I just need something to eat. Don't give me your money, but give me something. I just need something to eat. And I remember this because I'm one of these people that I would always carry, when I was in the city, a piece of fruit in my bag for me.
Never mind. I thought it was to give away, dude.
No. Well, I'd always carry like a granola bar and a piece of fruit because, you get hungry in between these things. And I always wanted to, and I'm one of these people, your blood sugar gets low and you get weird. And I saw her and I immediately just like ripped on my bag and I couldn't, and the people who were there in New York were they aren't carrying granola bars, necessarily. And just the few people that I was with, man, and then she sat down right next to me. She slid in the seat next to me and started eating this apple and this granola bar. I mean, she was clearly very hungry. And then I'm like, I needed to see that, God.
Yes.
I needed to experience that because all that cynicism and all that just judgment just sort of melted away and said, look, if everybody else takes advantage of me this time, this was important. This was defining.
You know what? And God was working and preparing you for the ministry that you have today even. And that is just so awesome. Just that story capsulizes it because God had prepared that moment for that woman there. Hey, thanks so much for touching on this hot button issue.
These are great
for us.
questions. I appreciate it.
Great.
Thanks for having
Thanks.
me. All right, God bless.